School around the United States and Australia. Currently, Jared is undertaking research in collaboration with the Science of Learning Research Center at the Melbourne Graduate School of Education and serves as co-president of the Science of Learning Group. The group dedicated to bringing the latest in brain and behavioral research to teachers, students, and parents alike. From my experience, I studied in his class at Melbourne Graduate School of Education, and I really appreciate his energetic teaching. But I'm not sure whether he will show that aspect today. However, I believe you will absolutely love his lecture. Please welcome Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath.
Is it okay if I just use my voice? I'll give you guys a heads up. Thank you so much. I speak quite quickly and vigorously. So Joanne, he had class with me, and he said at the end of the class, he said, I think I get about. I see what you're saying. Okay, well, I'm going to try and keep it down. He said, I think I get about 25% of what you're saying, but when I think about it, it starts to get deeper. So if you get even a quarter of what we're talking about, I'm going to be a happy guy. So just a heads up, my background is in neuroscience originally before I came into education. So a lot of what I do is trying to help people navigate that minefield that is neuroscience and education. There is so much stuff about the brain out there now that people are trying to sell you and tell you you need to do. As teachers, you need to know this about the brain. So much of it is not true. So much of it is just blatantly false. If you take nothing else away from me for the rest of your life, just remember this. Teachers aren't the experts at teaching. If you're looking for answers on how best to teach kids so that they learn and grow, do not ask a neuroscientist, do not ask a psychologist, do not ask a researcher, do not ask a lawyer, do not ask an economist, ask a teacher. You are the experts in what you do. We're experts in the brain, you're experts at teaching. Do not let anyone like me come up here and tell you how to do your job. You know what's best. Get ideas from us, but own your own expertise. Cool. That's where I'm going to leave that. So I'm going to take a look now. We're going to dive deep into the brain. What's the point of the brain in leisure? Which means I'm going to talk about emotions. And anytime I have to talk about emotions, I start with this man here. This is Tyler Southern. He was, I used to work at a clinic in Boston, and he was one of our patients. And so he was a soldier. He went to Iraq 4 tours of duty. On his last tour, the Humvee he was in got hit by an IED. And everyone in the Humvee except for him passed, unfortunately. So he got discharged. He comes back to the States. Everything was rough. And we got him back on his feet emotionally, but one recurrent problem was pain. He kept feeling incredible pain in his legs, and we just could not get rid of it. Drugs, stimulation, surgery, we couldn't do anything. And when I zoom out, you'll see the reason why. Tyler Southern didn't have any legs. This kid was complaining of pain in his legs, and he no longer had legs. So how do we treat this? So has anyone, have you guys heard of this problem before? So what's the typical name for it? Phantom limb pain, absolutely. This is where you don't have a limb anymore, but you still feel as though you do. So does anyone know how we treat this now? It's thousands of dollars of testing and millions of dollars of research. Do you know how we solve it? We do a little bit of VR. We use $5. $5. You buy a mirror, and we trick you into thinking you still have your limbs. So I'll show you this little video. This is called a mirror box. I can run up. Luckily, this is the only video, so I only have to do this trick once. But this is as simple as it is. Here's a box with a mirror. Imagine you only have one arm. You put your good arm in one side, and put your nub, or the little stub of your other arm in the other side, and the mirror makes it look like you've got the limb you're missing. And as you believe, you can see it works incredibly well. As you believe you have the limb, you can start to relieve the pain. So you can do the same thing with legs. What we did with Tyler, since he had no legs, was we filmed my legs on a treadmill, and he would sit there at mirror level, so he'd see in a mirror his body from the waist up, and then we'd project my legs walking from the waist down, and he tricked himself into relieving that pain. Why do I talk about this? Because we have an issue when it comes to emotions. It's a chicken or an egg problem. The way we commonly thought about it, and the way a lot of people still think about it, is let's say we go out and we see this spider. Assumption says you see the spider, you think you're scared, and that sends out the signals to your body. So now you start to feel that fear. So you see it, you get scared, and then you course your body and you start to feel what fear feels like. That ain't close to being true. We now know it's much more like this. When you see that spider, the first thing to respond is this. Your body starts firing up. The emotion begins here. We then have this little guy called an interpreter who sits there and goes, wait a second, I'm feeling these tingles. Why might I be feeling them? There's a spider there. Okay, I'm going to say those tingles are me being scared. So emotions start here and later are interpreted and felt by us. It's a physical bodily sensation before it's a mental sensation. This is why it's so easy to read people's body language. You know when someone's mad, you know when someone's sad, you know when someone's happy, you know when your spouse is not pleased with you, because you can't hide it from your body. This is where it's living. This is why a lot of de-stressing techniques are physical. Deep breathing, relaxation. You change the body, you change the mind. We also have this thing called emotional confusion, where your body's sending out a signal and you misinterpret what it means. So, great example, a guy I work with, he was going on a date with a girl for the first time. He brought her, instead of going to a bar, they went to a coffee shop, and he had like 3 or 4 espressos because he was nervous. The caffeine starts to make his body tingle. His interpreter kicks in and says, okay, I'm getting tingles, why am I feeling it? He assumed the tingles were because he loved the girl across from him. So he was getting this experience, and he said, I must really like her. So for the next week, he was just talking about how much he likes this girl, and oh my gosh, I'm gonna get married. So of course they go out on date 2, when he's not having coffee, and he realizes he doesn't like her at all. He just misinterpreted what that physical sensation was. So cut back to him. If this is true, then that means somebody who's missing some of their body would have less emotions than us. Let's take it a step further. If you're quadriplegic and emotions happen here first and you're not able to feel any of this, then how are your emotions? What do you guys think? If emotions start in the body and you no longer have a body, what happens to your feelings of those emotions? What do we think? Oh, I'm letting you off the hook. You want to talk back to me? If emotions start here and I don't have this, do I have emotions? Feels like you should. But what we find in quadriplegics is after they get over their initial case, their emotions are very, very narrow. They start to, whereas you and I might like swing between, say, happy and sad. We'll rank it like 5 out of 10 happy, and tomorrow I'm 3 out of 10 sad. What we see with quadriplegics is once they get used to the condition, they hover around 1 or 2. They just kind of stay flat. So they still have emotions, but they're really kind of even keel, which just seals the deal even more that this is where it's happening. Why do I talk about all this? Why does any of this matter for what we're about to talk about? Because I want you to remember that a lot of the time, and what I'm about to do now is I'm going to talk about this thing. And we tend to think that once we know this thing, we're going to have everything sorted. But this thing resides in this thing. And this thing drives the machine a lot more than this. So even though I'm going to be talking about the brain, we should never mistake that as the overall answer to what a person is. Your brain will show us some things, but if we eliminate the body, if we eliminate the holistic person, we're going to lose a lot. So don't, even though we're going to be looking at the brain and getting into the minutia, don't get bogged down thinking that that's the answer, now it's time to change. Recognize that this is just one aspect of a much larger picture that we need to get a hold of. And this is what I was talking to you about. We can't make this mistake. So let's talk. Leisure and education. What matters most is this problem here, stress. This is what neuroscientifically, leisure and education, this is where the crossroads come together. Stress response. Understand stress. 4 things we need to know. Actually, I'll keep it simple. I think for this one, I'm just going to say 2. First is the chemical cortisol. This is your stress signal here. Because we don't really, I don't even know what that chemical thing looks like, I'm just going to give it a little guide. Cortisol is bad, so we're going to say that that's Boris bad enough. The other chemical that we need to know is BDNF. Because no one's going to remember this little shape either, BDNF is good. It's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. The idea is BDNF helps build new neurons in the brain, which for a long time we thought didn't happen. We know it does now. So we're going to call him Bullwinkle. This is good. So we got the bad guy, we got the good guy. Oh, 2 bits of the brain now we need to know. First is the hippocampus. Anytime you hear someone talk about the hippocampus, what function do you think they're talking about? What's the major job of this? Does anyone know? You should know. I failed as a teacher. Here's your memory area. Oh, thanks, that's okay. I'm sticking here. Anytime you hear someone talk about the hippocampus, they're going to be talking about memory. So, hippocampus, I'm just going to move that speed back. There's your memory part of your brain. The other bit we need to know about is the frontal lobe. Here's essentially executive function. When we're learning, setting goals, inhibiting things, this is where that's going on. Cool. Cortisol, BDNF, the hippocampus, and the frontal lobe. Let's write this story. What is going on during a stress response? When you see something that you interpret as scary or stressful, the first thing that happens is cortisol floods your body. That's that feeling. You then interpret that as fear. Cortisol then floods into your brain. It's one of those few chemicals that can cross the blood-brain barrier, and it floods in there. Here's what happens. First, it floods into your frontal lobe. Once cortisol gets in there, it essentially shuts it down. It inhibits it. So you lose this executive function. If you want to feel this, and it does it for a very specific reason, it does it to focus you. If I wipe away what you're thinking now, the only thing you can pay attention to is what is happening right now. So if I take away thinking about the last talk and what you just ate for lunch and how you're feeling, if you have a stress response, you're going to dump all of that. The idea is so now you can focus here. Let's experience this. So here's a picture that I assume none of you have ever seen before. So this is in your working memory. Now I'm going to change one thing about this picture. Your job is simply to raise your hand as soon as you see what I've changed. Are you ready? Okay. You see what I changed? Sweet. Let's do this again. I'm going to put another picture up there you've never seen. It's going to jump back and forth. Every time it jumps, something's going to change. Raise your hand when you see what's changing this time. Anybody yet? We got one? Got two? We got one? If you see it, is it a small change? Is it a pretty massive change? Who still doesn't see it? Somebody tell me, what's changing in this picture? The mountain. This giant, I'm going to run back. This giant mountain in front of her face is appearing and disappearing. Let's do another one. Same thing, I'm going to put a different picture up there. It's going to flip back and forth. What's changing this time? Raise your hand when you see it. There we go. We got it. He's good. You're good at this stuff. I like this. We're in. If you see it, is it hidden? Or is the change right in the middle of the picture? What is it? It's the boat right in the middle of the picture. What's the difference between these two and this one? Why was this one so much easier and these two hard? What's the difference? What's that? No, it's not a background issue. Good thought, though. What else is going on? What's going on here that wasn't here? Do you see that little blink? That little white flash every time? What that white flash is doing is it's triggering your fear response, your stress response. It's tricking your system into thinking something unsafe is about to happen. And the second we get that cortisol flood, one of the first things to go is your frontal lobe. So whatever you were just thinking about gets thrown away so you can focus now. So essentially every time that flips, blink, blink, it's wiping away your memory of the picture before because your system is saying time to focus now. So when you get the stress response, the first thing that happens is you dump everything you were just thinking about. The next thing that happens is this. Whoops. Cortisol floods into your hippocampus. Now remember, hippocampus, if you hear that word, what function are we talking about? Memory. So here's your memory center. Cortisol floods into the hippocampus and it starts to kill neurons. It starts to physically destroy the hippocampus. So we need to counteract this. Enter BDNF. As soon as cortisol starts killing neurons, Bullwinkle shows up, and once the stress response is gone, Bullwinkle blows up and says, cool, I'm here to save the day, and he starts adding new neurons. So cortisol kills neurons, BDNF comes in and rebuilds those neurons. The idea is simple. When you experience stress, you probably want to remember what caused that stress. This is the system by which you remember it. So this time, if you see a lion and you get a stress response, BDNF says you're going to remember that lion because I'm going to build new neurons dedicated to you remembering that lion. So cool. Stress response kicks off. Everything gets wiped out of your frontal lobe so you can focus. Memory gets kind of, we call it agitated. You kill some neurons so you can build some new neurons and you remember what caused that stress. Awesome. You can tell this system was built for a reason. Because if in the past we were about to die or something was going to kill us, this system says you're not going to forget this. You're going to be focused and you're going to remember. Here's the problem. Chronic stress. This is a really short response. What happens when we're stressed out for extreme periods of time? When we experience days or weeks or months or years feeling stressed out? Let's go back here. Even when, once you get enough cortisol in the frontal lobe, even when that cortisol is gone, guess what happens? Frontal lobe stays inhibited. You start to not be able to hold new information in your mind. Furthermore, let's go back to the hippocampus. Every time you start getting a flood of cortisol, BDNF tries to come back on, but the cortisol kicks it out. BDNF tries to come back on, cortisol kicks it out. Eventually, BDNF just stops. Cortisol keeps killing neurons and you start to lose old memories. So chronic stress kills your ability to think and starts destroying old memories. Why does that matter? Because guess what happens to our students when they spend weeks, months, years trying to get A's for us so that they can get into college, so that they can impress their parents and get a job and get a wife and then eventually have kids and put them through this cycle. Students get chronic stress when they feel pressure. Chronic stress actually impairs their ability to be effective students. So what's the answer to chronic stress? Why are we all here? What's the best thing to do to get rid of chronic stress? You all know the answer. Boom, there you go, leisure. Relax. Take yourself out of a situation, reset the system. Now, when we talk about leisure in schools, we tend to think about this, like kids doing physical exercise, and that's definitely one aspect of it. But here's the same thing. Kids doing exploratory learning or doing hands-on depth learning when they're ready for it can have the same impact. Kids simply having fun can have the same impact to reduce that chronic stress response, stop that cycle, and regenerate the system. In addition to helping memory come back online and function come back online, what we see is when kids incorporate leisure into the classroom, when you kill that chronic stress response, you see better transfer of the knowledge they're learning. And transfer is all important in this world. We learn how to do math in math class, but we never really want to apply it in the real world for math class, because once we're out of that class, we're done. It's about transferring that knowledge to our real life. Leisure helps us do that. It helps us apply what we're learning to actual situations so that we can make an impact, so that we can make a difference. Here's your secondary bonus to leisure. When you are in a good spot, when chronic stress is done and you are feeling happy, you are feeling engaged, you are feeling calm, relaxed, and kind of there, present, happy, you get a flood of dopamine in your brain. Dopamine is one of the strongest learning chemicals we know of. Dopamine is essentially how we learn. But as I said before, we can never mistake the brain for the person. So I want to do a little experiment with you. Not experiment, a little thought. Let's call this a logic game. And we'll kind of end this here to see how we can go forward. Proposition. All dogs are brown. Cool. This is where we're going to start. All dogs are brown. Question. Spot is a dog. Does that mean Spot is brown? If all dogs are brown and we know Spot is a dog, does that mean Spot is brown? Yes? Cool. We're going to say that yes. Let's go the other route. Spot is brown. Does that mean Spot is a dog? Doesn't work that way. Only works one way. If we say if X then Y, you can only go one way. Let's take a look at another one. When I'm stressed, my heart beats faster. Right now I'm stressed. Does that mean that my heart is beating faster? Sweet. Let's go the other way. Right now my heart is beating faster. Does that mean I'm stressed? Absolutely not. It could be beating faster because I just did some exercise, because I'm in love, because I just had 4 cups of coffee. Any reason. Anytime someone starts to talk to you about the brain, this is the most important relationship you can think of. So let's see what just happens. I just told you that leisure increases dopamine. So let's play. When I learn, dopamine floods my brain. Right now I am learning. So that means dopamine is flooding my brain. True or false? True. Does it work the other way? Right now, dopamine is flooding my brain. Does that mean I'm learning? No. This simple problem is the entire issue with the field of educational neuroscience, of people trying to combine the brain with school teaching and learning. They make this mistake. They assume that, yeah, okay, if you got dopamine, you're learning. No, 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 no. Logic says no. So just because you do something that incorporates or increases leisure and that boosts dopamine, does that mean your kid is automatically going to learn just because you gave him that dopamine boost? No. This kid right here is probably as leisureful as I could possibly imagine. Is he learning in your class? Do not mistake the argument that because leisure increases dopamine, it will help your kids learn. That's not true. Because leisure increases dopamine, that will get your kid ready to learn, but that doesn't stop the need for us to keep teaching in ways that we know are best. This information doesn't kill your profession, actually shouldn't impact it much at all, besides how you think about it. Even with leisure, we still, if we want our kids to learn, we still have to use solid and effective teaching methods. That doesn't take that away. And who knows how to teach best in this world? Teachers. You guys. So we still gotta remember this stuff. Direct instruction when we're doing surface learning seems to work really well. Inquiry, And active learning seems to work well when we're going into deeper knowledge, when we're going from the surface down into depth and transfer. We still need to worry about feedback. We still need to worry about relationships, all the things that matter to us. The answer isn't going to come solely from how the brain responds to leisure. The answer is going to come from mixing what we know over here with what you guys know about good teaching and learning practices. So now, actually that's where I'll end. So, ideally, my idea here was just to give you a better background of the mechanisms behind which we're talking about here, how leisure might impact learning and teaching. So that when you listen to other things, you might have something to kind of hang some ideas on, put a hat over here, put a coat over here. But there is no answer here. This is just going to help us think deeper about these topics. But it still requires you guys to do what you guys do best. And that is work with your students to improve their outcomes. That's where I'm going to leave that. Thank you, guys.
Does anyone have a question or questions? Okay.
Thanks, that's really interesting. Playful. I have a question about your spider, because I was thinking you're Australian.
Yep.
Spider.